few years ago, primarily as a means of amusing myself, I started plugging the names of some of my favorite music artists into legal databases in an attempt to see how many times, if ever, they had been cited by judges and law professors. Eventually, I decided to turn my amusement into a research project. The idea was to see what Lawyer's Choice of Music Artists says about us as a profession, and to examine the good and bad uses of such lyrics in persuasive legal writing. The result was this article. I wound up compiling a list of the 10 most frequently cited artists. Simply mentioning Bruce Springsteen's name wasn't enough to qualify. Instead, the author actually had to use Springsteen's lyrics in some manner to advance a legal argument. The first thing to notice about the list is that, with only a couple of exceptions, most of the artists first rose to popularity in the 1960s or 70s. This probably reflects the influence of baby boomers in academia and the judiciary as much as it does the quality of the lyrics. Another thing to notice is that the top 10 consists almost exclusively of white males, Joni Mitchell being the only exception. This means that some prominent artists who have something to say about the law are excluded from the list. We'll know the legal profession has truly become more diverse when we see artists like Jay-Z being cited more frequently. There are also no country music artists on the list. Johnny Cash has been cited a fair number of times, but that's about it. That's noteworthy because country purports to be the music of everyday folk. I think this absence, this exclusion of country artists probably suggests a certain amount of elitism. Every kind of music but country. Alternative rocks are also absent from the list. R.E.M. made the list. Elvis Costello and The Clash have both been cited a few times, but other fairly successful artists are absent. This may be another area that will change as more people like myself, smart alecky pseudo-hipsters who grew up listening to this kind of music, make their way into academia and the bench. I was also interested in recording the good and bad uses of music lyrics in legal writing. Songwriting and legal writing have some things in common. They both frequently rely upon storytelling and both rely upon metaphors. Metaphors are common in legal writing. From the fruit of the poisonous tree to Chief Justice John Roberts' comparison of judges to umpires, metaphors are frequently used in the legal profession. But not all metaphors are useful. Sometimes the metaphor might not help the reader find a connection between two seemingly disparate things and might instead simply distract the reader. There are plenty of strained attempts at incorporating lyrics in legal writing, like this horrible use of the Beatles and Pink Floyd. Opinion doesn't help much by the fact that's the worst Beatles song ever. Bob Dylan is by far the most frequently cited artist in legal writing, both in judicial opinions and law review articles. This includes both good uses and not so good uses of his lyrics. Dylan's inclusion in legal writing makes some sense since Dylan has written quite frequently about the law throughout his career. In The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll, for example, Dylan takes some artistic license in telling the story of an African-American hotel worker who was killed by drunken socialite William Zanziger. Dylan expresses deep cynicism about the law's unequal treatment of a black woman at the hands of a wealthy white man. Perhaps Dylan's most direct commentary on the legal system is The Hurricane, the story of the conviction of boxer Reuben Carter for murder. Here comes the story of the hurricane. Here, Dylan paints a dark picture of corruption in the legal process, involving dishonest police, perjury, a biased judge, and an all-white jury that eventually results in Carter's conviction. In a 2008 decision, Chief Justice John Roberts made history by citing, for the first time in the history of the Supreme Court, the lyrics of Bob Dylan in a published opinion. The case involved the issue of whether a billing and collection firm had legal standing to bring suit on behalf of a group of payphone operators. In dissenting from the majority opinion finding that the firms had standing, Chief Justice Roberts argued that since the firms had no right to substantive recovery, they lacked standing. Roberts didn't cite any prior opinion of the court in support of his argument. Instead, he relied upon the lyrics of Bob Dylan and misquoted them slightly. When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. In City of Ontario v. Kwan, the court declined to decide whether a public employee had a reasonable expectation of privacy in text messages he had sent that had been searched by his employer. Part of the court's justification for refusing to decide the issue was its fear that technology was advancing so rapidly that it was unwise to articulate a bright-line rule regarding text messages. The court's refusal prompted a stinging response from Justice Scalia, who used Dylan to tweak the majority for its refusal to decide the issue presented to the court. This case involved the commuter's allegation that the TBTA had wrongfully charged his E-ZPass account for trips he hadn't taken. The court noted that instead of actually introducing any evidence, the commuter instead relied upon the so-called Bob Dylan "It Ain't Me, Babe" defense.
Oh, but it ain't me, babe. No, 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 it ain't me.
But by far the most commonly cited song is Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues. The case was first cited by a California appellate court discussing the issue of when a party is required to introduce expert testimony to explain an issue to the jury. If the issue is easily understandable through common experience or common knowledge, expert testimony is not needed. A California court used Dylan to restate the rule in a more colorful way. Since that opinion, Subterranean Homesick Blues has become almost boilerplate for the idea that expert testimony isn't always required. The song has also been cited by other courts for similar propositions regarding the law.
Keep a clean nose, wash your plain clothes. You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows.
So in conclusion, there are definitely risks associated with using music lyrics to advance a legal argument. However, when used effectively, lyrics can help illuminate legal concepts and add to the persuasive force of a legal argument. At a minimum, the inclusion of song lyrics in legal writing can make the writing more accessible and enjoyable. And in the end, although it's only rock and roll, I like it.